So under 2 miles of frozen ice, there might be something that could change everything we know about human history. Antarctica, the most alone and forbidden continent on Earth, is not just an empty land of ice. Radar scans show mountains shaped like pyramids, old maps drawn hundreds of years ago that seem to show its shores without ice, and red rivers that flow from glaciers like the land is alive. Why are huge parts of this continent blocked off, protected by agreements and secrets? And what would we find if the ice melted? The ruins of a lost civilization, the real beginning of humanity, or even proof of something not from this world. Tonight we go down into the frozen place where stories and science mix together, following the shadows of secrets that have waited for thousands of years, waiting for the ice to break. If mysteries like this interest you, think about subscribing so you won't miss the next adventure. And tell us in the comments, what do you think is under Antarctica's forever ice? Picture yourself standing on the edge of a continent that few people will ever see in their lifetime. In front of you stretches a view without color, only endless white broken by sharp peaks of black rock that rise like the backs of buried giants. The air is sharp enough to hurt your lungs, and the wind cries across the ice like it carries voices from another time. This is Antarctica, twice the size of Australia, bigger than all of Europe, and holding in its glaciers 90% of Earth's fresh water. It is more than a wasteland. It is a safe kept closed by ice, a library of memory written not on pages, but in frozen layers that go back millions of years. And if we believe the whispers of explorers, maps and stories, this frozen library might not just keep the history of ice ages and climate. It might hold the true history of Earth itself. Science confirms that under Antarctica's heavy ice sheets are entire lands frozen in time. Fossilized forests found near the Beardmore Glacier tell us that this continent was once green. Leaves from beech-like trees and pollen from flowering plants are still there, pressed into stone, proof that Antarctica once enjoyed a warm climate. Imagine it, rivers winding through valleys, dinosaurs walking under polar skies that never got fully dark, wetlands alive with dragonflies and amphibians. This land was once a home of life, long before it became the graveyard of silence we know today. What does it mean that Antarctica has worn so many faces? If the land under the ice could have forests, could it not also have had civilizations? The fossils say that the continent was livable, and in every human culture we know wherever the land was fertile, people appeared. Yet here, we are told no human foot ever left its mark until modern times. Still, questions remain like shadows on the snow. Why do maps drawn hundreds of years ago seem to show this continent free of ice? And how did those map makers know what they should not have known? Scientists drill deep into the ice and pull out thin cylinders, ice cores, each layer recording the world as it was when that snow first fell. They read them like books, ash from old volcanoes, bubbles of air from times before humans existed, even the ghost of exploding star radiation from distant stars. Antarctica is a time machine keeping evidence from times long erased everywhere else. The puzzle is this. The continent is both the newest and the oldest, untouched by humans, but holding secrets that might rewrite what it means to be human. And so the main idea unfolds. If Earth's true story, its missing chapters, its erased legacies are hidden anywhere, they are hidden here, because Antarctica does not just hide, it keeps. Ice is the great record keeper. It presses everything under its weight and seals it from rotting, keeping the forgotten alive in silence. If there were ruins, if there were objects, if there were entire civilizations swallowed by disaster, here is where they would survive, waiting for the glaciers to pull back. This is why nations guard it with agreements, and why exploration stays so limited. Even in an age of satellites, huge areas of Antarctica remain blank on the map. And in those blank spaces, imagination grows. We hear stories of pyramids poking from the ice, of hidden cities seen in radar scans, of forests frozen mid-breath. Some dismiss these as tricks of rocks or mistakes of understanding. Others whisper that they are remains of a forgotten time, one erased on purpose or buried by nature herself, but every mystery must begin with the ground itself. To understand Antarctica as the keeper of Earth's true history, we must first understand the strangeness of its presence on the oldest maps we have. Maps that charted the world before explorers even knew this continent existed. Maps that show its coastlines drawn with strange accuracy. How could this be? Did a civilization long before us map the Earth when Antarctica was green and livable? As we stand on the edge of this safe of ice, the silence is heavy, but it is not empty. It speaks of memory, of a world folded under miles of frozen water, waiting to be read like a book sealed in crystal. And the first page of that book is not found in ice, but on old paper drawn in ink more than 500 years ago. Unroll an old chart across a wooden table. Its edges are worn, the paper cracked, and yet the lines it carries whisper of coastlines no sailor of its time should have known. The year is 1513. An Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis puts together a map that will later confuse historians. On its surface, South America is drawn with surprising accuracy for the time. Rivers winding, mountains sketched where they should be. But it is the southern edge that catches the eye. There, under the known world, lies a landmass looking like Antarctica, and not just Antarctica as we see it now, covered in ice and silence, but Antarctica, as it might have looked millions of years ago, its coasts free, detailed, alive. For hundreds of years, mapmakers dreamed of a terra australis incognita, an imagined continent to balance the world. But the Piri Reis Map is different. When Charles Hapgood looked at it in the mid-20th century, he argued it could not be the product of guessing. Its shapes lined up too closely with modern sound surveys of Antarctica's true coastlines under the ice. Hapgood suggested something bold, that Piri Reis had drawn from much older sources, pieces of charts kept from a civilization able to sail around the world thousands of years before history begins. Albert Einstein himself wrote an introduction to Hapgood's work, noting that while controversial, the theory deserved attention. The idea is huge. If such a civilization existed, where are its ruins, its records, its tools? Perhaps they lie buried in the one place that keeps its dead perfect, under Antarctica's ice. The mapmakers of the Renaissance admitted they copied from earlier maps, some said to have come from the Library of Alexandria before it was destroyed. Could knowledge of an ice-free Antarctica have slipped through the centuries like a forgotten gift, written in paper, and passed hand to hand long after the civilization that first charted it was gone? The Piri Reis Map is not alone. The Orontius Phineas Map of 1531 also shows a southern landmass with rivers and mountain ranges surprisingly similar to what we now know exists under Antarctica's frozen surface. The Mercator maps of the 1560s echo the same strange familiarity, suggesting not one but several sources drawn from an older well of knowledge. In each case, details surface that explorers of their time could not have checked, bays that match sound profiles, mountains that line up with underground ridges, rivers flowing where radar now confirms old channels. Doubters argue that these features are coincidences, the product of guessing stitched together with imagination. But coincidence upon coincidence begins to weigh like evidence. If these maps truly echo an earlier time, then we face a troubling thought. Someone mapped Antarctica when it was free of ice. That would place human sailing knowledge, not thousands but tens of thousands of years before recorded history. Perhaps even further back into times we believe were filled only by hunter-gatherers. The question then sharpens. Who were these mapmakers? Survivors of Atlantis, as some suggest? Migrants from a forgotten continent now lost under the waves? Or were they simply humans like us, but part of a cycle of civilizations rising and falling, each reset by disaster? Whatever the case, these maps are like fingerprints left by vanished hands. This is how Antarctica begins to hold the true history of Earth. Not in the fossil record alone, but in pieces of memory that surface where we least expect them, in Ottoman files, in European libraries, in charts drawn by men who admitted they did not understand the full meaning of what they copied. The ice may keep the land, but the maps keep the knowledge. Together they form a conversation across centuries, one frozen in glaciers, the other in paper. When you look again at the Piri Reis Map, imagine it not as a curiosity but as a window. Picture the coastline drawn with confidence, the pen moving as if guided by memory of a land alive with rivers and green valleys. Did that mapmaker know what he was sketching? Or was he just keeping a ghost image, a copy of a copy from a time when the world was very different? As night settles across our exploration of old maps, another shadow waits on the horizon, a shape too balanced, too deliberate to ignore. If the map suggests knowledge of Antarctica before the ice, then perhaps the land itself holds monuments from that forgotten time. And in the heart of the Ellsworth Mountains, a pyramid-shaped peak rises from the snow, a puzzle carved against the sky. The plane drifts across an ocean of white, its engines humming against the silence of Antarctica. Below, the land stretches unbroken until something interrupts the pattern, a shadow too sharp, too balanced to belong to chance. Rising from the Ellsworth Mountains, a structure pierces the sky. Four faces meet at a point, each edge clean, each slope lined up with strange accuracy. From above it looks less like a mountain and more like a monument, a pyramid in a land where no civilization is said to have lived. This strange thing first caught the world's attention in 2016 when satellite images revealed its form. Standing nearly 4,150 feet tall, the peak mirrors the shape of Giza's Great Pyramid. Yet it stands not on desert sands, but on a frozen continent locked away by ice. Scientists classify it as a nunatak, a mountain peak that juts through the ice sheet, sculpted by millions of years of wind and freeze-thaw cycles. They argue its sharpness is a natural result of wearing down, similar to the Matterhorn in the Swiss Alps, but doubt fails when faced with its balance. Most nunataks are rough, broken, messy. This one presents four nearly identical triangle faces. How does nature craft shapes so exact, so building-like? And why does this pyramid appear lined up, its edges pointing in cardinal directions like its Egyptian cousins? The debate has become a mirror of belief. For some, a coincidence of rocks. For others, the remains of a civilization long erased. Across the world, pyramids share a strange sameness. In Egypt, in Central America, in China, in Bosnia, great structures rise with bases wide, sides sloping, and tops reaching toward the heavens. Cultures separated by oceans and thousands of years, all built the same form. Some argue the pyramid is simply a stable shape, the natural choice for any monument, yet others suggest it reflects a shared gift, a memory of a forgotten source civilization whose knowledge spread across the earth. Could Antarctica's icy pyramid be part of that same story? A sibling to Giza and Teotihuacan, built in an age when this land was not buried in snow. Satellite surveys add fuel to the fire. Beyond the single pyramid-like peak, faint outlines of other balanced forms appear, half buried in snow. Grids, ridges, possible square bases. The idea emerges, not an isolated mountain, but the trace of a complex, a city beneath miles of ice. Rock scans remain unclear, clouded by the sheer depth of the glacier. Yet even shadows can spark wonder. If the pyramid is artificial, who built it and when? Rock evidence tells us Antarctica was warm until about 12 million years ago, with forests and lakes growing. Human history as we know it is much younger. Could another form of intelligence have lived here before us? Or could the land have supported a branch of humanity erased by disaster? Some even whisper of visitors from beyond. Extraterrestrial builders who mark the Earth with pyramids as beacons, Antarctica's structure standing as one more in a global network. Doubters counter with firm logic, wearing down. Not intelligence shaped the Ellsworth Peak. The human eye is drawn to balance, finding patterns where none exist, and yet doubt remains. If the pyramid was simply rock, why does it connect so strongly with the world's oldest building form? Why do we feel, looking at it, that it was meant to be seen? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between. The mountain may indeed be natural, but its form may have inspired stories that echo across time. The ancients who first glimpsed Antarctica, whoever they were, may have seen this pyramid and remembered it, writing its likeness into the monuments of warmer lands. If so, then the pyramid of ice is not just stone, but memory itself frozen into the landscape. And so Antarctica deepens its role as the keeper of Earth's true history. Whether natural or artificial, the pyramid challenges the story that this continent was always empty. It suggests eyes once looked upon it, hands once measured it, stories once grew around it. And in that suggestion lies a question we cannot dismiss. What else hides under the glaciers, waiting to rise? As the plane circles and the pyramid shrinks into shadow, the story does not end. It points us forward deeper into Antarctica's mysteries. For if monuments may wait under the ice, what of those who looked for them? In the mid-20th century, a fleet of ships and planes set course for the frozen south. Their mission was covered in secrecy, their return covered in rumor. The world would come to know it as Operation Highjump. The year was 1946, and the world was fragile, like a cracked mirror just beginning to hold its shape again. Cities still smoked from bombings. Families mourned across continents, and new lines of power were being drawn in the sand. The Cold War had not yet frozen, but its chill was in the air. In this climate of exhaustion and suspicion, the United States organized an expedition of stunning size to the southernmost edge of the world. It was not a quiet scientific trip with a handful of researchers. It was a fleet. 13 ships, including aircraft carriers, destroyers, tankers, and supply vessels. Over 4,700 men, dozens of aircraft from heavy transport planes to sleek fighter escorts, all meeting at a continent that had no people, no cities, no armies. Why Antarctica? Why then? Why so soon after the destruction of war, when the world's resources were scarce and its governments tired? Officially, the mission's name was Operation Highjump. Its purpose, to test equipment in extreme cold, to train people for polar warfare, and to conduct aerial mapping of uncharted land. But the scale was out of proportion, and the questions it left behind echo louder than the official explanations ever did. The fleet was divided into 3 groups, each tasked with sweeping arcs of exploration, eastern, western, and central. Their aircraft flew long trips over ice that no human had ever seen, photographing glaciers and mountains across more than 1.5 million square miles. Bases were set up, supply chains laid down, and fuel storage hidden under snow. Admiral Richard E. Byrd, the veteran explorer who had already made his name in earlier polar expeditions, was the public face of the mission. To the world, Byrd was the hero of the ice, a man who had flown further south than any before him. But to those who studied his words later, he became something else, a messenger whose warnings hinted at secrets far beyond science. In his public reports, Byrd was careful, exact. Yet at times his language slipped. In a 1947 interview given in Chile after the expedition ended, he cautioned that the United States must prepare to defend against the possibility of attacks coming from over the polar regions. His words sounded military, not scientific. What threat could come from Antarctica? Some understood it as Cold War talk, aimed at reminding the public that the poles were open to long-range bombers. But others heard something else, a coded admission that Byrd had seen things in Antarctica the world was not ready to know. The claimed secret diary of Admiral Byrd deepened the mystery. First appearing decades later, it describes an extraordinary experience. While flying over the Antarctic interior, Byrd reported his instruments failing, his radio crackling into static. He claimed his plane was grabbed by an invisible force and guided into a hidden valley of warmth and light, where forests grew where ice should have been. He wrote of an underground city called Agartha, lived in by tall beings with glowing eyes, who spoke of ancient knowledge and warned humanity of its destructive path. Most historians dismiss the diary as made up, an invention crafted to feed the rising wave of UFO interest in the post-war years. The document has no official proof, and Byrd himself never spoke of such an encounter publicly. And yet the imagery is vivid, haunting. A lush oasis hidden under the ice, a city of light, a message of peace delivered to a world on the edge of nuclear destruction. Whether real or imagined, it connects because Antarctica is exactly the kind of place where the unlikely still feels possible. Even without the diary, Operation Highjump carried its own oddities. The mission was scheduled to last 6 to 8 months, yet it was ended after barely 8 weeks. Officially, the expedition faced harsh weather, supply failures and accidents. Several aircraft were lost, including the Martin PBM-5 Mariner George 1, which crashed into the ice with 3 men killed. The survivors endured days of hunger and frostbite before rescue. Reports spoke of mechanical failures, sudden storms and unexplained difficulties. To some, these were expected dangers of polar exploration. To others, they hinted at encounters not recorded in official logs. Consider the political backdrop. In 1938, Nazi Germany had sent its own Antarctic expedition, led by the MS Schwabenland. The swastika-marked darts it dropped across Queen Maud Land claimed a territory the Germans called Neuschwabenland. After the war, rumors swirled that fleeing Nazis had built secret bases under the ice, supplied by submarines. When U-530 and U-977 surfaced in Argentina, months after the war's end, conspiracy theorists connected the dots. The submarines had carried leaders, scientists, or advanced technology to hidden strongholds in Antarctica. Could Operation Highjump have been at least in part an attempt to find and destroy such a base? The Cold War makes this believable. In 1946, tensions with the Soviet Union were growing. Antarctica, rich in untapped resources and placed between hemispheres, could not be ignored. If the United States believed that remains of Nazi technology or Soviet interest stayed there, sending a fleet was not madness, but caution. Yet the secrecy that clung to the expedition, the missing records, the mysterious interviews, the sudden end, kept the mystery alive. Eyewitness accounts decades later added more fuel. Some participants hinted at encounters with unidentified flying objects during aerial surveys. Disks of light moving with impossible speed, objects that disrupted instruments and vanished without sound. These testimonies, unverified and scattered, merge easily with the era's fascination with UFOs. Still, the timing is strange. Operation Highjump ended in March 1947. By June, Kenneth Arnold saw his 9 flying saucers over Washington. By July, Roswell became a word that would never fade. Was it coincidence or a chain reaction sparked by something glimpsed in the Antarctic skies? Operation Highjump reminds us that Antarctica is more than ice. It is a stage where myth and secrecy intertwine, where governments act with urgency that goes against their official explanations. The sheer size of the operation tells us this was no casual survey. Whether it faced hostile weather, hidden Nazi remains, or something more otherworldly, it carried weight enough to change the course of Byrd's own words, to plant seeds of wonder that still grow today. And so, as the fleet sailed home and the ice reclaimed its silence, the continent's mystery deepened. We are left with a puzzle, a mission too large for its stated purpose, too short for its goals, too strange in its aftermath. Did Byrd glimpse a hidden kingdom, as the diary claims? Did he encounter remains of Nazi ambition? Did he brush against something otherworldly? Or was the mystery born from the very nature of Antarctica itself, a land where silence makes everything left unsaid bigger? Whatever the truth, Operation Highjump stands as one of the great unanswered chapters in the story of the frozen continent. It shows us how power, fear, and myth meet in the white void. And it prepares us for the next layer of the mystery. If Antarctica hides more than ice and mountains, could it also hide entire worlds under its surface? Realms long imagined in myth as the hollow earth, legends are often dismissed as stories. Yet sometimes they continue across continents and centuries, with such similarity that they demand more attention. Stories of hidden realms under the Earth's surface, are among the most continuing of all. The Tibetans spoke of Shambhala, a bright kingdom hidden behind snow-covered mountains, where wise rulers guarded wisdom until the right moment to reveal it. In Hindu beliefs, Patala was an underworld richly decorated and lived in by Nagas, serpent beings with jewels of light on their foreheads. In the myths of the Maya, the underworld of Xibalba was a place where rivers flowed with blood, ruled by lords who tested the souls of mortals. Even in the Norse sagas, Yggdrasil's roots touched wells in the deep hidden realms of power and fate. These stories share an idea. Under our feet lie hidden worlds, either paradises or prisons, realms of gods, spirits, or forgotten peoples. To cultures scattered by oceans and divided by centuries, the notion of an underworld was not story alone, but geography, a place one might stumble into through a cave, a volcano, or perhaps the poles. The hollow earth hypothesis, first seriously suggested in the 19th century, transformed myth into wonder. John Cleves Simms Jr., a U.S. Army officer turned speaker, declared in 1818 that the earth was hollow and livable within, with great openings at both poles leading inside. He imagined lush inner continents warmed by an inner sun where unknown civilizations might grow. Though dismissed by scientists of his day, Simms inspired novels, societies, and even requests to Congress to fund polar expeditions. Fiction writers carried the idea forward, most famously Jules Verne in Journey to the Center of the Earth, where prehistoric creatures still roamed huge caverns. By the time Admiral Richard Byrd's Antarctic expeditions captured headlines in the mid-20th century, the hollow Earth idea was already part of the cultural imagination. The claimed secret diary written by Byrd seemed to confirm it. In its pages, he described being pulled by strange forces into a hidden valley of warmth and light in the middle of Antarctica, encountering beings tall, glowing, and wise. They welcomed him to an underground city called Agartha. Its halls, he claimed, glowed with a light that had no source. Its inhabitants warned him of humanity's destructive path, nuclear weapons, environmental destruction, and urged him to carry their message back to the surface. Whether the diary is real or not, the vision it paints is striking. Imagine flying over endless white ice, your instruments failing, and suddenly seeing a valley green and alive, untouched by the cold. Trees sway in a wind that should not exist. Rivers sparkle in sunlight that somehow gets through where it should not. Towers of strange shape rise from the earth, their walls glowing with a steady light. The beings who greet you are calm, their eyes glowing, their voices like musical chords. They speak not of conquest, but of taking care, asking humanity to turn away from destruction. Such imagery draws directly from the combined stories of Shambhala, Patala, and other hidden realms. Science, of course, provides no room for hollow planets. Sound waves travel through the Earth and reveal a solid mantle and a melted core, not huge interior continents. And yet Antarctica makes this certainty more complicated. Under its surface, hot spots from the Earth carve ice-free valleys. Radar scans reveal voids the size of cities under the glaciers. In 2020, studies near Queen Maud Land discovered massive empty spaces under the ice sheet. Officially, these were explained as meltwater erosion. But to those who already believe, they were the hidden gates, entrances into Agartha itself. The McMurdo Dry Valleys offer another point of connection. These are one of the driest places on Earth, empty and rocky despite lying within the coldest continent. Yet tiny life thrives there in conditions like Mars. Some call it a natural experiment, a glimpse of how ecosystems could survive, sealed away in darkness and isolation. For those inclined toward mystery, the dry valleys are proof that life finds shelter in hidden pockets. If microbes survive there, why not larger forms in greater voids below? In myth, Agartha is not just a physical place but a spiritual one where advanced beings keep wisdom from past ages. Mysterious traditions describe it as a hub of tunnels and chambers spanning the globe with entrances at the poles, the Himalayas, and other sacred sites. Accounts from European mystics in the 19th century described it as the center of an underground network, linking all hidden realms. To imagine Antarctica as its gateway is to connect the frozen continent with legends from Tibet, India, and Central America. It becomes not a blank wilderness, but a keystone in humanity's mythic geography. The hollow world idea lingers like an echo in stone. It suggests that what we call history is not only sealed under ice but hidden under our own steps, kept in chambers where civilizations older than memory may have survived. Perhaps the glowing beings of myth were not gods at all, but the last messengers of those hidden worlds. Perhaps the pyramids and megaliths scattered across continents are not isolated marvels, but pieces of a buried design surfacing briefly, like signals from the depths before vanishing again into the cycle of forgetting. Doubters remind us that such visions are guessing, that myths are stories for spiritual truths rather than literal places. They point to rocks, to physics, to the absence of physical evidence. Yet even doubters acknowledge that Antarctica hides huge voids we have yet to explore, landscapes unseen for millions of years, and myth, like ice, keeps memory in forms we cannot always understand. What makes the hollow world hypothesis continue is not proof, but connection. Across cultures, across ages, humans have believed that wisdom survives beneath mountains, beneath caves, beneath ice. Antarctica, with its impossible silence, becomes the perfect canvas for this belief. Its difficulty of access invites imagination. Its hugeness invites wonder. Its silence invites us to imagine what voices might be waiting within. And so the hollow world may not describe rocks, but it describes humanity's longing, the hope that knowledge was not lost but protected. That even if civilizations rise and fall on the surface, there is a shelter beneath, a place where memory survives until we are ready to listen. Yet sometimes the earth itself speaks in stranger ways. In one corner of Antarctica, a glacier bleeds red into the snow, staining the white with scarlet streams. Science explains it as iron-rich salt water, but to the eye it appears as though the continent itself is wounded. If Antarctica hides worlds within, it also shows signs on its surface. Bleeding ice that whispers of mysteries deeper than we can yet understand. In Antarctica, silence is not empty. It presses like weight. It hums in the ears until even the beat of your heart feels loud. And then out of nowhere, that silence is broken by something almost impossible. A river of red flowing from a glacier's mouth, staining the white with scarlet. This is Blood Falls, one of the most haunting natural wonders on Earth. To those who first saw it in 1911, members of Robert Falcon Scott's expedition, it seemed as if the continent itself were bleeding. A glacier alive, wounded, letting out a crimson secret. At first, no one knew what to make of it. The explorers described it in hushed tones, unsure whether it was a warning or miracle. Some guessed about algae, others about minerals, but the sight was so strange that it could not help but attract whispers of the supernatural. The contrast was too striking, white ice and black rocks split open by a gash of living red, as though the land itself had a hidden pulse. Decades later, science offered an explanation, though even this reads like something from another world. Under the Taylor Glacier lies a pocket of water, sealed off for more than 5 million years. Trapped under pressure, deprived of light, it became brine, dense, salty, and rich with iron. When cracks open, the brine seeps through. As it touches oxygen at the surface, the iron rusts, turning red. The glacier is not bleeding, but breathing out a memory of ancient seas. But the story did not end with chemistry. When scientists studied the brine more closely, they discovered something amazing. Life. Tiny organisms, invisible but thriving, had survived in this isolated pocket for millions of years. They live without sunlight, without oxygen, feeding instead on sulfur and iron. These microbes are extremophiles, adapted to conditions once thought impossible for life. Their existence has shaken our understanding of biology. For if life can survive here, cut off and frozen, then it could survive in equally unfriendly environments. On Mars, under the ice of Europa, in the oceans of Enceladus, blood falls is not just a wound in the ice. It is a window into alien oceans. The microbes themselves are like time travelers. Isolated for millions of years, they have changed along pathways going away from the surface world. They may keep ancient traits, echoes of the first forms of life on Earth. Studying them could give us clues to how life began, how it adapts, and how it might survive long after humanity has passed. In this sense, Blood Falls is not simply a site. It is an archive, another chapter in Antarctica's role as the keeper of Earth's true history. Yet even with scientific explanations, mystery clings to Blood Falls. For one, its flow is unpredictable. Some years the red stream gushes brightly, painting the ice like a wound reopened. Other years it dwindles to a trickle or vanishes, as though the glacier is holding its breath. Satellite images taken in 2022 revealed faint outlines in the surrounding ice, patterns some claimed look like channels or even structures beneath. While most researchers say this is natural ice movement, the imagery added fuel to wonder. Is Blood Falls not just natural, but linked to something hidden deeper below? Stranger still are the experiences of those who work nearby. Scientists stationed in the McMurdo dry valleys where Blood Falls emerges often report unsettling feelings, whispers carried on the wind, tools disappearing only to reappear, footsteps in snow with no one around to make them. Mental stress in isolation may explain much of this, but the red waterfall adds a creepy backdrop that makes every shadow bigger. Some have described feeling as if they were being watched, not by one another, but by the land itself. For conspiracy-minded observers, Blood Falls is no quirk of rocks. They imagine it as a vent, a release valve for something artificial or ancient hidden under. Could it be a marker, a signal deliberately designed to draw attention? Others whisper of biological experiments, either ancient or modern, that use the hidden underground lake as a laboratory. The idea sounds fantastical, yet in a continent where so much remains unexplored and access is tightly controlled, such wonder thrives, and there is more. In the 1970s, soil samples near the dry valleys showed unusual chemical signs, signatures that some argued hinted at processes beyond known rocks. The findings were never fully explained, and though mainstream science dismissed them as contamination or error, they linger in the lore of Antarctica's mysteries. Could they be connected to the same underground system that feeds Blood Falls? Even without wonder, the implications are profound. The brine pocket under the glacier is part of a larger hidden network. Underground water science that may connect to other lakes deep under Antarctica's surface. Blood Falls may be only a leak from a far greater reservoir, a body of water untouched for eons, carrying life forms and chemical signatures that could rewrite our understanding of the planet. Every drop of red water is a message hinting at unseen chambers below. For those drawn to myth, the imagery is irresistible. A glacier that bleeds brings up ancient stories of cursed lands, of mountains alive with spirits, of Earth itself as a living organism. Online forums compare it to the veins of a hidden giant, or even to gateways between worlds. Its crimson streams are a warning that the safe under is not empty. To some it is a scar marking the entrance to Agartha. To others, it is evidence of hidden technology leaking chemicals into the ice. Yet perhaps the truest mystery lies in how Blood Falls blurs categories. It is at once natural and supernatural, explained yet unexplained science and myth. It reveals the toughness of life and the fragility of our knowledge. Standing before it, one cannot help but feel that the glacier is speaking in its own language, a language of color and flow, a language we have not yet learned to translate. And so Blood Falls stops being just a sight. It becomes a wound that refuses to close, a scarlet reminder that the ice is not lifeless. Within its flow are whispers of oceans sealed away, microbes carrying the breath of forgotten ages, and the strange proof that even in silence the Earth remembers. The glacier bleeds not death but memory, a living trace of worlds that once were released drop by drop into the present. But this scarlet mystery is only a doorway. If a single crack in a glacier can release life untouched for 5 million years, what lies in the huge lakes, sealed deeper below? Antarctica hides more than pockets. It hides entire oceans under its ice. To step further into its mystery, we must go down into those alien waters where silence and darkness have kept secrets beyond imagination. Antarctica is often imagined as a blank slate, a flat sheet of ice stretching to infinity, but under that surface lies an entire hidden landscape, carved and veined like a secret map. In the last half-century, radar, sound surveys, and satellite imaging have revealed a world that should not exist. More than 400 underground lakes, some small as ponds, others huge as inland seas. Together, they form a hidden water network, rivers and reservoirs flowing in silence unseen for millions of years. If Blood Falls is a glimpse of a secret vein, then these lakes are the hidden heart of the continent. The most famous of these hidden waters is Lake Vostok. Under nearly 4 kilometers of ice in East Antarctica, it is one of the largest freshwater lakes on Earth, 250 kilometers long and up to 80 kilometers wide. It has been sealed off from the air for at least 15 million years. A self-contained world under crushing ice. Russian scientists drilled into it in 2012, and when water from the lake surged upward, it was like opening a safe untouched since long before humanity walked the Earth. Traces of tiny organism DNA were later found, suggesting that life survives even here in darkness, pressure, and isolation. Lake Mercer, discovered in 2019 and hidden under a kilometer of ice, offered another revelation. When researchers drilled into it, they found tiny organism communities alive and traces of carbon dating back thousands of years. The presence of organic materials suggested that Antarctic underground lakes are not sterile. Instead, they are ecological time capsules carrying whispers of ancient ecosystems. And then there is Lake Whillans, drilled in 2013. Scientists expected to find little more than salt water. Instead, they discovered nearly 4,000 different species of microbes thriving in an environment cut off from sunlight for thousands of years. It was as if the lake had kept an entire tiny organism city, adapting and changing in silence. In 2020, researchers identified another body of water under the ice, which they named Lake Enigma. Unlike others, its radar profile suggested structures within. Mats of tiny organism growth forming shapes almost building-like, pillars and ridges like forests at a tiny scale. If verified, this would not only be life, but life creating complex stable structures in complete darkness. The implications stretch far beyond Antarctica. For space biologists, these lakes are similar to oceans beyond Earth. Europa, a moon of Jupiter, is thought to have an underground ocean under its icy surface. Saturn's moon Enceladus sprays water vapor into space from cracks in its ice. Mars shows evidence of ancient rivers and perhaps salty underground lakes. If microbes thrive in Antarctica's hidden waters, then life could thrive elsewhere in the solar system. In this way, Antarctica does not just keep Earth's history. It may reveal the universality of life itself, but the mysteries are not all scientific. Some radar scans have revealed strange things that resist easy explanation. In 2018, a team studying the Princess Elizabeth Land region discovered a radar signature suggesting a cavity 2/3 the size of Manhattan under 3 kilometers of ice. Officially, it was explained as meltwater erosion, but some whispered of structures or chambers too regular to be natural. In 2021, near Lake Vostok, electromagnetic readings detected pulses without clear rock cores. Once again, explanations were offered: ice friction, instrument noise. Yet the strange things added to the lore. What if these lakes hide more than microbes? Ancient myths, too, seem to echo this hidden water science. Greek poets spoke of Oceanus, a huge river circling the world under the land. Norse mythology described wells at the roots of Yggdrasil, where fate itself was written in water. In the Hindu Mahabharata, underground oceans are described as huge and glowing, homes to ancient beings. These stories, scattered across civilizations, suggest that humanity has long imagined hidden waters under the surface. To modern ears, they sound poetic. But in the context of Antarctica, they take on new weight. The myths may be story or they may be memory. The underground lakes are more than hidden waters. They are living fossils, ecosystems untouched by extinction, archives written in DNA older than any civilization we know. If advanced life ever thrived on this land, perhaps it pulled back into these silent chambers, kept like relics waiting in the dark. Even without ruins or objects, the lakes stand as monuments in their own right. Liquid libraries of time, holding the memory of vanished climates, forgotten species, and civilizations erased from the surface world. Doubters argue the romance of these lakes is overblown. They say microbes prove toughness, not hidden civilizations. Voids prove rocks, not chambers of knowledge. Yet doubt cannot erase the fact that these lakes exist, huge and alive, under a continent we barely understand. Less than 2% of Antarctica's underground water science has been explored. 98% remains sealed, waiting. Imagine drilling into a chamber of water untouched for 15 million years, and finding not only microbes but structures, a lattice of stone or metal or something unrecognizable. Imagine a city buried in darkness, kept by the ice as perfectly as Pompeii was kept by ash. Imagine DNA sequences so alien that they reveal an entirely new branch of life, rewriting biology. These visions may sound fantastical, but so too would bloodfalls have sounded before it was first seen. A glacier that bleeds. The lakes under Antarctica remind us that the continent is layered, ice upon rock, water under ice and silence covering all. Each layer holds secrets. Each is an invitation. Bloodfalls was the doorway. The lakes are the corridors beyond, and beyond them may lie deeper mysteries still, where biology blends with myth. For in the waters around Antarctica, legends speak of huge beings, pale shapes rising from the waves, tentacles unfurling from the deep. If the underground lakes keep alien microbes, perhaps the Southern Ocean keeps something larger, creatures that survived when the world changed. Guardians of the frozen safe. To find them, we must step out of the lakes and into the sea. The Southern Ocean is unlike any other. Circling Antarctica, with currents so strong they stitch the world's seas together, it is a liquid fortress that both protects and isolates. Within its swells, huge icebergs drift like cathedrals adrift, creaking and splitting as waves gnaw their frozen foundations. Under them lies a realm of twilight, where light filters only faintly, where pressure deepens and sound carries in strange, distorted ways. It is here in this cold abyss that myths and biology intertwine, a theater for creatures both real and imagined, beings that stir in the human imagination as guardians of Earth's forgotten ages. Among the most whispered of these legends is the Ningen. First discussed in Japanese sea forums during the early 2000s, the Ningen is described as an enormous pale humanoid figure, sometimes 30 meters long, drifting silently through Antarctic waters. Witnesses claim to see arms spreading wide like fins, legs trailing like tails, and a face unsettlingly human, blank, white, with dark eyes staring from a body otherwise featureless. Some accounts describe a smooth, seamless skin, glistening in the floodlights of passing vessels before vanishing into the waves. Blurred photographs and shaky videos surfaced online, always unclear yet captivating enough to give the legend form. Doubters dismiss these sightings as mistaken icebergs, whales, or tricks of light. And yet the descriptions connect with ancient sea lore. For centuries, sailors have spoken of beings that emerge from the deep, not monster-like like the kraken, but creepily human. In Inuit tradition, there are the Kalupalik, pale-skinned water-dwellers with stretched limbs. In Celtic myths, Selkies shift between seal and human form. The Ningen may be a modern echo of timeless images, the sea as mirror reflecting human shape back at us. If the Ningen is the human-shaped shadow of the Southern Ocean, the kraken is its tentacled terror. Rooted in Scandinavian sagas, The kraken was said to rise from the deep and wrap entire ships in its limbs. For centuries it remained the stuff of myth, until the ocean reluctantly revealed the colossal squid. First filmed alive in 2006, the colossal squid is bigger than its giant cousin, with hooked tentacles, swiveling claws, and eyes the size of dinner plates. A specimen caught near Antarctica in 2007 measured over 14 meters. Its mass and alien body fueled the thought that sailors had not exaggerated so much after all. Yet the legend continues beyond even that. In 2016, a satellite image near Deception Island appeared online, showing a long shadow stretching through the water over 100 meters in length. Officials explained it as a sea stack, an underwater rock formation, but to many who looked at the image, its outline looked like an enormous tentacled creature just below the surface. The Southern Ocean, after all, is less explored than Mars. It is easy and perhaps reasonable to believe that something huge could remain unseen in its depths. Science, too, supports the possibility of hidden giants. Deep-sea surveys in the Ross Sea have revealed new species of amphipods, fish with antifreeze proteins in their blood, and creatures glowing with bioluminescence. In 2019, researchers discovered a sponge colony thriving under 900 meters of ice, clinging to a boulder where no sunlight reached. Each revelation reminds us how little we know. Life has a habit of appearing where we least expect it, thriving in forms that once seemed impossible. For those seeking the true history of Earth in Antarctica, these creatures, real or legendary, become living fossils, survivors of ages we cannot otherwise access. The ningen, if real, might be a changed form of sea mammals, adapted to ice and abyss. The colossal squid may be a relic family line stretching back to the time of dinosaurs. Even myths of the kraken could hold memories of encounters with creatures glimpsed but not understood, passed down in oral traditions until they became monsters. Some fringe theories go further. They suggest these beings are not remains but guardians, watchers of the frozen safe, perhaps linked to myths of Agartha or Atlantis. In this view, the pale form of the ningen is not simply an animal but a sentinel, surfacing now and then as a reminder that the waters hide more than fish. Tentacled shadows become not strange things, but deliberate warnings. These ideas blur into the mysterious, yet they continue because the Southern Ocean itself is a perfect stage, huge, unmeasured, unknowable. Doubters will always counter with rational explanations. The ocean is deceiving. Icebergs can appear alive in shifting light. Whales can breach in unexpected ways. Sonar pings can distort into false shapes. And yet dismissals do not erase the unease. For even confirmed science, colossal squids with eyes like worlds, sponges living under solid ice, fish that swim in liquid colder than freezing, is strange enough to inspire awe. The myths are only exaggerations of truths already too strange to believe. This is how Antarctica continues to hold Earth's history, not only through ruins or fossils, but through life itself, the survivors, the strange things, the shadows. The Southern Ocean is a living archive where creatures embody eras long past, changing in silence, while the surface world forgets. Each pale shadow seen from a ship, each sonar strange thing, each satellite image becomes another page in that archive, daring us to look closer. And while legends of sea beings stir the imagination, the human world has also sought this ocean for reasons less mythical, but equally haunting. In 1938, Nazi Germany sent an expedition southward, marking Antarctica with swastikas and whispers of secret strongholds. The waters that once carried myths of kraken and ningen also carried warships and submarines. What those missions sought and perhaps found still lingers in rumor. To understand Antarctica as a stage not only for myths and biology, but for ambition and secrecy, we must now follow the trail into Neuschwabenland, where flags fell on ice and rumors of hidden strongholds began. December 1938, the ship MS Schwabenland pushes through heavy seas, its bow cutting the South Atlantic as if driven by obsession. On board are not only sailors, but scientists, pilots, and Nazi Party officials. The vessel is outfitted with catapults to launch Dornier-Wal seaplanes, able to survey huge stretches of ice from above. Their destination is Queen Maud Land, a frozen wilderness claimed by no nation. To the world, it was an expedition of science and resource gathering. To those who watched from the shadows of history, it became the seed of a legend that Nazi Germany sought more than whales and weather. They sought a hidden power under the ice. The official record tells a story of economic practicality. Germany, preparing for war, was hungry for whale oil, essential for producing soap, margarine, and industrial lubricants. The Schwabenland expedition photographed more than 600,000 square kilometers of Antarctica, dropped swastika-marked aluminum darts to stake symbolic claims, and mapped glaciers and mountains few outsiders had ever seen. By February 1939, it returned home with images, samples, and notes. Straightforward, ordinary, but secrecy always breeds suspicion. Why send such a well-equipped mission at the very edge of war? Why invest in Antarctica when Europe itself was on the brink? After the fall of the Third Reich, these questions deepened. Rumors emerged that the Nazis had discovered huge ice caverns in Queen Maud Land, warmed by heat from the earth, and had begun to build there. A base, a shelter, perhaps even a fortress for technology too advanced for its time. They named the land Neuschwabenland. Submarines added fuel to the fire. In 1945, two German U-boats, U-530 and U-977, surrendered in Argentina months after Germany's defeat. Their captains offered vague explanations for why they remained at sea so long. Some guessed they had carried cargo or high-ranking officials to hidden Antarctic bases before turning themselves in. The possibility of Nazi leaders escaping to the south, kept by secret enclaves under the ice, became irresistible to conspiracy theorists. From there, the story wove itself into the fabric of Cold War myth Operation Highjump, launched by the United States in 1946-47, was said to have been more than a scientific survey. Whispers claimed it was a confrontation, a search and destroy mission against Nazi remains hiding in Antarctica. When the expedition returned months earlier than planned, rumors surged that American aircraft had clashed with strange discs, flying saucers of Nazi origin, built with technology gleaned from mysterious research or even otherworldly sources. The rumors meshed with real history. During the war, Nazi Germany had indeed pursued experimental designs, rocket-powered aircraft, jet engines, and rumors of disc-shaped craft like the Haunebu or the mysterious Die Glocke, the bell. These projects were covered in secrecy and in most cases never advanced beyond prototypes. Yet their existence suggested that the regime was willing to explore technologies far outside normal boundaries. If pieces of such work were transported to Antarctica, the frozen continent could have become a storage place of the Third Reich's strangest ambitions. Queen Maud Land itself holds strange features that feed wonder. The Schirmacher Oasis, a rare ice-free plateau within the region, spans 25 miles long and 2 to 3 miles wide. With freshwater lakes and rocky ground, it stands out like a scar of warmth in the frozen desert. To believers, it was the perfect place for a base. To rock scientists, it is simply a strange thing caused by heat from the earth and unique wind patterns. But in a landscape of ice, even natural strange things take on the flavor of mystery. By the 1970s and 80s, the idea of Nazi Antarctic bases had merged with UFO lore. Authors suggested that New Schwabenland was home not only to Nazi remains, but to secret alliances with beings from elsewhere, exchanging technology for shelter. Underground caverns became imagined as hangars, hidden runways carved under the ice. These ideas appeared in pulp books, whispered at conferences, and spread through networks of wonder. No physical proof ever surfaced, but the story refused to die. Then came modern strange things. In 2018, radar surveys detected a massive void under the Thwaites Glacier, nearly two-thirds the size of Manhattan. Officially explained as a cavity formed by meltwater, the discovery reignited claims of hidden chambers. In 2020, a Russian team reported unexplained electromagnetic pulses near Queen Maud Land. Natural processes were blamed. Yet the findings quickly vanished from headlines, filed away but not discussed. To those who already believed, these were not random events but footprints of the past. The Antarctic Treaty of 1959 added yet another layer. Signed by nations otherwise locked in Cold War tension, it froze territorial claims and restricted activity on the continent. Officially, the goal was peaceful cooperation and scientific preservation. Unofficially, for conspiracy theorists, it became proof that the great powers had found something they did not wish to reveal. Why else, they ask, would rivals agree so quickly and so completely on anything? Doubters counter with reason. The Nazi Antarctic expedition was real, but its aims were limited to whaling and mapping. No believable evidence supports the idea of hidden bases. Submarines surrendered in Argentina because captains sought refuge, not because they unloaded secret cargo. The radar strange things are natural rocks. The electromagnetic pulses were instrument errors, and yet doubt cannot fully erase the allure. For Antarctica is a continent built on absence. Absence of access, absence of proof, absence of answers. Into that void, stories flow like water, freezing into legends. What matters is not whether the Nazis truly built hidden strongholds, but why the idea refuses to vanish. Perhaps it continues because it touches something deeper, the sense that Antarctica, with its silence and its shadows, must be hiding more than ice. That in its caverns, sealed away from war and weather alike, humanity has left behind not just myths but memory, and so the image lingers, swastika-marked darts falling on perfect snow. Seaplanes circling mountains untouched by history. U-boats slipping under polar seas. Were they gestures of vanity, empty claims on empty ice? Or were they the first strokes of a darker legacy, buried where the world is least likely to look? Antarctica does not answer. It keeps its silence. But the story does not end here. For even as whispers of Nazi bases spread, another thread took hold. Reports of disks in the sky, lights that defied physics, objects that moved like no human craft. If Antarctica was a stage to hidden strongholds, perhaps it was also host to visitors from beyond. And so the legend shifts from war machines to flying saucers, from Neuschwabenland to the UFO connection. The summer of 1947 brought a new word into the human imagination: flying saucer. Pilot Kenneth Arnold, soaring near Mount Rainier in June of that year, reported 9 crescent-shaped objects darting across the sky like saucers skipping on water. Newspapers grabbed the phrase, and within weeks reports of similar objects flooded in from around the world. That same summer, near Roswell, New Mexico, an incident occurred that still fuels wonder today. And just months earlier, Admiral Byrd's Operation Highjump had ended suddenly in Antarctica. To some, the timing was more than coincidence. What if the skies over Antarctica had already hosted these objects? Rumors claimed that Byrd's pilots encountered strange craft, disks that moved faster than any known aircraft, turning without wings or sound. These stories, though unverified, took root in an era alive with whispers of secret Nazi technology and hidden bases under the ice. After all, Germany during the war had poured resources into experimental designs. Jet fighters, long-range rockets, and rumors of disc-shaped craft like the Honebu or the mysterious Die Glocke, the Bell. Could pieces of such experiments have made their way to Antarctica, shielded from Allied eyes? Science insists there is no evidence of Nazi UFOs. The documents are unclear, the accounts often made up. Yet in the absence of certainty, myth grows. Operation Paperclip, which brought German scientists to the United States after the war, only deepened suspicion. Figures like Werner von Braun transformed American rocketry and space programs. If rockets were real, could stranger designs have been hidden, their blueprints frozen under Antarctic ice. But the UFO connection stretches beyond human technology. Many accounts describe not machines of steel and rivets, but craft that move as though unbound by physics, shimmering, glowing, vanishing. Some suggest they were not built by humans at all. In this vision, Antarctica is not simply a refuge for Nazi experiments, but a staging ground for something older, otherworldly. The continent's difficulty of access makes it a perfect guardian. A land where visitors from beyond might come and go unseen, their presence hidden in the storms and ice. Satellite images in 2023 seem to fuel this story again. A long, straight trail appeared etched across the ice, leading to a massive, dark object tilted at an angle. To some it looked like a crash site. Others noted an oval shape nearby, half buried in snow. A disk, perhaps, or just rock smoothed by wind. Natural explanations are easy. Ice movement, shadows, digital distortion. But when viewed in the context of 70 years of rumors, they feel like one more piece of a larger puzzle. How does this light up the idea that Antarctica holds Earth's true history? Because UFOs, whether human or not, suggest that Antarctica is not just a passive archive, but an active frontier. If the skies above its glaciers once carried craft beyond our understanding, then the continent is part of a larger story. Earth is a crossroads of knowledge, technology, and beings that defy our timelines. The pyramids, the maps, the hidden bases all become threads in a tapestry that stretches from ancient civilizations to post-war experiments to cosmic age. Visitors, doubters will remind us that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And yet absence of proof is not proof of absence. The UFO mystery has continued exactly because it refuses to close. Antarctica, with its silence, makes this refusal bigger. It is the perfect backdrop for secrecy, a place where the unknown can hide in plain sight. And while governments issue denials, they also enforce restrictions. After the Antarctic Treaty of 1959, huge areas of the continent became off-limits. No-fly zones, zones reachable only to a select few. Officially, these are for environmental protection. But the timing, in the wake of UFO rushes and Cold War tensions, fuels another thought. Were they also meant to guard secrets the ice has not yet revealed? The story of Antarctica now turns from skies to treaties, from glowing objects to ink on paper. For in 1959, the world's rival powers, locked in suspicion everywhere else, suddenly agreed on one thing: Antarctica must be sealed. On December 1st, 1959, 12 nations signed a document in Washington, D.C. that would change the destiny of the last untouched continent. The Antarctic Treaty, a short text of only 14 articles, declared that this frozen land was to be kept for peace and science alone. No military operations, no nuclear testing, no territorial expansion. In a world broken by the Cold War, where superpowers stared each other down across every border, Antarctica became the one place where rivals agreed to share. On the surface, it was a triumph of cooperation. Under that surface, it has long been read as something else, a wall of silence. The timing raises questions. Why at the very moment the United States and Soviet Union raced for nuclear power, would they set aside rivalry to protect a remote, hostile land? Why declare that no new territorial claims could be made? Why lock the continent away under strict controls, where only scientists vetted and supervised could enter its depths? Environmental protection and research are noble causes. But the treaty was signed long before ecological awareness became a global priority. It feels early, almost preemptive, as though it answered a question the public had not yet asked. Some argue the treaty exists exactly because of discoveries that should never be exposed. The rumors of Operation Highjump's sudden end, of Nazi strongholds in Neuschwabenland, of birds' strange warnings all came less than 15 years before the treaty. Was the agreement in part a means of containing what had been found? The strict no-fly zones, the restricted research areas, the closed meetings of treaty powers each year. These features invite suspicion. Officially, they protect fragile ecosystems. Unofficially, they look like quarantine. What might be quarantined? Some suggest ancient ruins hinted at by pyramid-shaped nunataks and satellite strange things. Others point to the strange events of blood falls or the electromagnetic pulses detected near Queen Maud Land in 2020, unexplained but quickly dismissed. Theorists even whisper of technology beyond human origin, stored or observed in places where only a handful of authorized researchers may walk. Whether myth or reality, the secrecy itself becomes fuel for belief. The Antarctic Treaty is a reminder that silence can sound louder than words. When nations as divided as the United States and the Soviet Union suddenly set aside rivalry, it hints that the stakes run deeper than politics or territory. Perhaps the most powerful evidence is not what is shown, but what is kept back. For if the continent were only empty ice, why build such extraordinary walls around it? Of course, doubters counter with simpler explanations. They say the treaty's goal was to prevent conflict over resources, to protect a fragile wilderness, to ensure that Antarctica became a laboratory for global science rather than a battlefield. In this view, its success proves its value. 6 decades of peace, major scientific discoveries from ozone depletion to climate records, all made possible by collaboration. The secrecy, they argue, is bureaucratic, not conspiratorial. And yet the mystery continues because while the treaty proclaims open science, the reality is controlled access. Because while it forbids military activity, military bases from earlier expeditions remain buried in ice. Because while it invites cooperation, huge regions of the continent are still unexplored, invisible even to satellites, their access controlled by committees the public seldom sees. So the Antarctic Treaty stands like an invisible fortress, protecting, restricting, hiding. Whether its walls guard only fragile ecosystems or also forgotten legacies, we cannot say. But the effect is the same. Antarctica remains forbidden, its true history locked away. Still, silence is not permanent. Ice melts, climates shift, and in the layers under, secrets emerge. Fossilized forests found near Beardmore Glacier remind us that this land was not always frozen. There was a time when rivers flowed here, when life thrived in warmth. What else might remain kept from that forgotten age? To find the true history of Earth in Antarctica, we must look backward to the green continent that was. Close your eyes and strip away the ice. Imagine Antarctica not as a frozen desert, but as a land of forests and rivers. The air is cool but not bitter. The skies alive with migrating birds and valleys, covered with ferns, conifers, and flowering plants. This is not fantasy. This is Antarctica as it once was, millions of years before the first human story was told. Evidence of this ancient paradise comes from deep under the glaciers. In 1912, near the Beardmore Glacier, explorers uncovered fossilized leaves, impressions of beech trees where no tree should grow. At first, they were dismissed as mistakes. Later, drilling and sediment cores confirmed the truth. Antarctica was once lush and warm. On Alexander Island and along the Antarctic Peninsula, upright fossilized tree trunks still stand rooted in ancient soils, 7 meters tall, silent witnesses to a vanished climate. Pollen samples taken from the seabed near the continent reveal that as recently as 12 million years ago, tundra-like plants thrived here long after ice had begun its slow conquest. Rocks tell us why. Antarctica was once part of Gondwana, a supercontinent that linked South America, Africa, India, and Australia. When it drifted southward, and the global climate cooled, glaciers spread, forests pulled back, and the land we know today was locked under miles of ice. Yet the memory of its green age remains carved into stone, pollen, and fossil. This ancient greenness changes everything. It proves the land was once alive. Rivers flowing and forests breathing where now only glaciers stand. If plants could grow, why not animals? And if animals, why not something more? People or even civilizations during those brief windows of warmth. Archaeology insists that humanity came too late, long after the ice had taken hold. Yet the fossils suggest a longer cycle, a deeper rhythm. Perhaps other intelligences walked here before us, human, pre-human, or something altogether different. Their traces sealed in silence under the frozen safe. Some fringe reports hint at more. In 2023, surveys near the Dufek Massif detected shapes looking like massive stone blocks lined up in patterns. Descriptions mention markings and even coins bearing unfamiliar symbols. Mainstream rock scientists dismiss these as natural formations or wrong understandings. But the very possibility echoes earlier. Strange things seen in satellite imagery, grid-like ridges, faint outlines of walls, even shadows of what appear to be buried pyramids. If such relics exist, they would prove that Antarctica was not just green, but once alive with cultures lost to time. Myth too lends weight. Many cultures keep stories of southern lands swallowed or hidden. The Greeks with their Terra Australis Incognita, the Polynesians with chants of journeys to icy realms, even Plato's tale of Atlantis, a civilization destroyed by disaster. Could these myths, twisted by centuries of retelling, be pieces of memory from an age when Antarctica was a cradle rather than a tomb? Doubters argue the fossils and pollen prove only natural history. Forests, yes, but no civilizations. Yet the keeping of ancient landscapes under the ice keeps the door open. Radar mapping has revealed entire river valleys, plateaus, and basins untouched for tens of millions of years. In East Antarctica, scientists discovered a buried region the size of Belgium, shaped like northern Europe's hills and waterways. What if kept within are remains of something unexpected? The notion that Antarctica was once green reshapes the puzzle of the frozen safe. It tells us the continent is not unchanging but cyclical, a land transformed by climate over eons, and within those cycles may lie the erased chapters of Earth's true history. As the glaciers close again over the fossilized forests, another thought surfaces. If Antarctica once grew as a living continent, could it also have been the setting for humanity's greatest legend, the story of Atlantis, a civilization lost in a single night? Some have dared to say that Antarctica is not just like Atlantis, but that it is Atlantis, frozen rather than drowned. Plato's words echo like a warning from across thousands of years, a mighty civilization, advanced in knowledge and power, destroyed in a single day and night of disaster. For centuries, the story of Atlantis has haunted human imagination. Was it story, myth, or memory? Many search for it in the Mediterranean, others in the Atlantic, still others in the Americas. But there is another theory, quieter yet more haunting, that Atlantis is Antarctica, not drowned by the sea, but entombed by ice. The idea gained speed in the mid-20th century when Charles Hapgood suggested the theory of Earth crust displacement. Unlike the gradual drift of plate tectonics, Hapgood imagined that the planet's outer shell could shift suddenly, moving entire continents in a rock instant. He suggested that Antarctica, once positioned in a warmer latitude, might have supported a thriving civilization before a disaster shifted it to the pole, where ice rapidly swallowed it. In this vision, Atlantis did not vanish under the ocean, but froze under glaciers. Albert Einstein, although cautious, wrote an introduction to Hapgood's work, noting that while guessing, the theory deserved consideration. What evidence supports such a bold claim? The ancient maps offer one clue: the Piri Reis chart, the Orontius Phineas map, the Mercator, pictures of southern lands that look like Antarctica free of ice. The pyramid-like nunataks in the Ellsworth Mountains offer another, suggesting huge building lined up with cardinal directions. Fossil forests prove the continent was once livable, while radar scans reveal river valleys and basins buried intact under the ice. Add to this the myths of global floods, from Mesopotamia's Epic of Gilgamesh to the Hebrew Bible's Noah to Andean tales of Viracocha, and a pattern emerges: memory of a civilization drowned or erased by a sudden world-changing disaster. Could that disaster have been the Younger Dryas disaster, roughly 12,800 years ago, when a sudden cooling swept the globe, glaciers surged, and sea levels rose? Some researchers suggest a comet impact or series of cosmic events triggered the change, wiping out megafauna and reshaping climates. If so, a growing society in Antarctica could have been destroyed overnight, its remains sealed under snow that became ice, its story remembered only in myth as Atlantis. To imagine Antarctica as Atlantis is to reframe human history. Instead of isolated civilizations arising independently, we inherit pieces of one greater culture, scattered like shards. Pyramids in Egypt and Central America, megaliths in Peru and Turkey, myths of floods in every corner of the world. The ice becomes not only a keeper, but a veil hiding the ruins of a lost golden age. Doubters rightly object. No confirmed ruins have been dug up, no objects retrieved. The rocks of Earth crust displacement is not widely accepted, and Antarctica's ice is millions of years old, far predating human civilization. But wonder lingers in the spaces science cannot yet reach. Less than 2% of the continent has been explored under the ice. Radar strange things, metallic pieces and lined-up ridges continue to surface in reports, often dismissed, sometimes quietly filed away. The absence of evidence in a land sealed by 4 kilometers of ice is not evidence of absence. If Antarctica is Atlantis, then the true history of Earth lies frozen, waiting, not erased but postponed, not destroyed but kept. And as the ice melts under the pressure of climate change, the possibility grows that pieces may surface. Walls, cities, technologies that belong to a time we have forgotten. The thought is huge, unsettling, exciting. A frozen Atlantis explains why myths across cultures speak with one voice. It explains why ancient maps seem to show the impossible. It explains why nations protect Antarctica with secrecy. It explains why we feel, staring at the endless white, that something is hidden. But if civilizations rose and fell in cycles, their legacies erased by disaster, then perhaps we are not the first and perhaps not the last. To probe that idea, we turn not only to ice and stone, but to the code written in our bodies. In our DNA, ghost populations whisper of forgotten family lines. Might they too lead us back to Antarctica's secret chapter? The truest archive of history is not written in stone or paper, but in flesh. Within every cell of our bodies lies a record more ancient than monuments, DNA. It carries not only the instructions for life, but also the memory of migrations, unions, extinctions, and forgotten ancestors. When geneticists map these codes, they uncover echoes of family lines long lost, ghost populations that have left no bones, no tools, no cities, only signatures in the double helix. And some of these echoes raise unsettling questions about what kinds of peoples once walked the earth and where they may have come from. Take the Denisovans, identified from a single finger bone found in a Siberian cave. Though their remains are scarce, their genes ripple through the living in Melanesians, Tibetans, and others. Then there are the ghost populations in Africa, family lines that split from humans hundreds of thousands of years ago, yet left traces in modern DNA. In the Amazon, researchers have found genetic markers linking indigenous peoples to ancestors more closely related to Australasians than to neighboring populations, suggesting migrations or contacts across huge oceans in prehistory. These strange things whisper of lost networks, vanished peoples, and journeys erased from memory. What if Antarctica was once part of this hidden web? If the continent was green and livable in distant times, perhaps its inhabitants contributed to the genetic mix of humanity. Their bodies swallowed by ice would never be found, but pieces of their DNA may live on in us. Ghostly signatures with no matching fossil record. Could the mysterious haplogroup scattered across the world be remains of contacts with a civilization that thrived in Antarctica before it froze? Doubters object there is no direct evidence, but absence is the nature of ghost populations. Their reality is guessed from statistical shadows in genomes. the way faint stars appear only at the edge of vision. In the same way, Antarctica itself is known largely through guessing. Radar scans give glimpses under the ice. Both DNA and ice keep what is otherwise invisible. Together they may tell a story we are only beginning to piece together. Mythology often holds similar themes. The Hopi speak of emerging into a new world after previous ones were destroyed. Polynesian voyages tell of ancestors who sailed from lands that no longer exist. South American traditions describe Viracocha, a god of civilization who came from across the sea, tall and pale, bearing knowledge of building and writing. Could such myths keep memories of encounters with family lines whose homelands are now erased? Perhaps even Antarctica itself. The deeper we dig into DNA, the more we see cycles of rise and erasure. Civilizations appear, vanish, and leave only traces in myth, in ruins, in genomes. If Antarctica was once a cradle, its people may still speak through us, even if their cities lie buried. This transforms the question of Earth's true history. It is not only about monuments under the ice, but about who we are and who we once were. And yet, if Antarctica's voices survive in our blood, the continent itself remains silent, sealed by glaciers. But silence is not eternal. The ice is melting, the safe opening. Climate change, for all its danger, is also revelation. As glaciers pull back and shelves collapse, the land begins to give up what it has hidden. The past may soon step into the present, and with it, the possibility that the ghosts in our DNA will find their lost homeland. The Antarctic Peninsula groans and breaks under a warming sky. Once thought unchanging, the ice has begun to surrender, pulling back at a pace that surprises even the scientists who measure it. In 2002, the Larsen B ice shelf, larger than the U.S. state of Rhode Island, shattered in just a few weeks, its pieces drifting into the Southern Ocean like broken glass. In 2023, sea ice coverage fell to its lowest recorded amount, exposing coastlines unseen in human memory. The safe of silence is opening. What it reveals may reshape not only the future, but the forgotten past. When glaciers pull back, they do not reveal emptiness. They expose valleys carved by ancient rivers, bedrock shaped by forests, and sometimes strange things. Near the Ross Ice Shelf in 2023, researchers reported metallic pieces embedded in melting ice. Official explanations spoke of natural debris, meteorite material perhaps, but whispers spread quickly. Were these the remains of lost technology buried during a time when Antarctica was alive? Radar scans have also detected cavities the size of cities under the Thwaites Glacier, the Doomsday Glacier, whose collapse could raise sea levels by several meters. Officially, they are voids formed by meltwater. To others, they are huge chambers, perhaps natural, perhaps not. The thought that climate change might expose more than landscapes is unsettling. If structures lie under the ice, they may soon surface. Satellite images already stir wonder. Rectangular ridges, grid-like shadows, even shapes looking like runways or doorways half covered by snow. Most are likely tricks of light or rocks, but some feel deliberate, as though the continent itself is teasing us with glimpses of what it still guards. This raises a haunting irony. For decades, the Antarctic Treaty has restricted exploration, sealing the continent from prying eyes. But nature itself may be breaking that pact. As ice melts, it will reveal what no treaty can hide. The process will be dangerous. Sea level rise threatening coastal cities, currents disrupted, weather unbalanced. Yet in disaster lies revelation. The true history of Earth, long locked away, may emerge not because we searched for it, but because we have forced the ice to pull back, and perhaps this is part of the cycle. Legends of Atlantis speak of a civilization erased overnight, drowned by rising seas. The Younger Dryas flood myths describe a world reset by sudden climate collapse. Now in our time the earth warms again, seas rise again, and the ice yields its secrets. Are we witnessing the same pattern? A wheel of history that turns endlessly, erasing and revealing, burying and uncovering. If so, then Antarctica's melting is not only a warning of the future, but also a message from the past. Doubters will insist that what we find will be rock-related, not huge buildings, tiny life, not civilizational. And perhaps they are right, but even microbes kept for millions of years tell a story of toughness and adaptation. They remind us that life itself is the true monument, that survival is the deeper gift. And if by chance we uncover objects or ruins, then the boundary between myth and history will dissolve. The question lingers, are we ready for what the ice may reveal? If the safe opens and the true history of Earth rises into daylight, will we recognize it or deny it as we have denied so many uncomfortable truths? The answer may come sooner than we expect. As the ice breaks and rivers of meltwater carve new paths, we stand at the threshold. Beyond lies silence deeper than any library, secrets older than any nation. And in that silence, a puzzle awaits. The closer we come to uncovering Antarctica's truths, the more the continent itself becomes fragile, endangered, vanishing. Its voice grows louder even as its body fades. And so we approach the final chapter, the frozen silence itself. What does Antarctica say to us across millions of years, across myths and maps, across ruins and DNA? It speaks not in words but in stillness. The silence that remains is our last gift. Night settles across the southern horizon, a darkness so complete it seems to erase the world. Antarctica becomes not a place but a presence, a continent of silence, its hugeness folding sound into nothing. And yet that silence is not empty. It is layered like the ice itself, carrying voices from times we can scarcely imagine. To stand here even in thought is to sense the weight of time pressing down.